Hey everyone, my name is Yugvir, and I'm the user experience researcher here at Gitwit. Welcome to First Impressions Part 2, and welcome back if you're coming from the first one. So let's dive in. In the first part, we talked about why first impressions matter and how we can use the 5-second test on websites, designs, just to optimize that user experience. But what if we want a more holistic understanding on the entire experience and the product walkthrough? Today, I want to introduce the AttrakDiff survey, which is a really good tool to do just that. But before we get into the tool, let's talk about what we want to understand from that first interaction. We want to think of it in terms of functional and emotional aspects, and functional being more like, do users feel like they can achieve their goals with this product? Emotional being more in terms of, is it stimulating enough? Is it exciting enough? Do users feel like they relate to this product? Do they see themselves using it? All of these emotions that people feel when they first interact with your product are something that really informs and cements their first impression and thus retention. That's why I think it's a great idea to try and often map out or quantify these feelings, and that's something that the AttrakDiff is really intended to do. It's a free online tool survey available for anyone to use and administer. It's something that asks users to rate along a spectrum of word pairings, and all of these word pairings are really carefully chosen to reflect those functional and emotional aspects. It then calculates an overall attractiveness scale and gives you rich reports on what people perceived from your first interaction and what users perceived from that first experience. But I learned from examples. So let's talk about the last time I used it so you have an example. I used it for a card game to promote sustainable activities, and the brand words we wanted to associate with this game were creative, cheap, bold. It works very similarly to a 5-second test where you take someone through an experience, in this case, a gameplay for that card game, and then administer this. And it gives you really rich reports on averaging out on all of what the user said. So here the insights were that users perceived the experience to be a bit more complicated than we anticipated. They thought it was confusing, and they thought it was more cautious than bold. So the recommendations here are that we can take all of this back to our design team and think about, do we change the game structure? Do we change the game rules to make it more simple? Do we make it more clearly structured? Or do we think about branding and trying to make it more bold, right? It opens up so many more avenues to run little experiments. So it's always really useful to know what users perceive your product to be. Now, when to use it? You can use it for single use to get a quick gut check on how your brand is being perceived. You can compare yourself with competitors, and you can benchmark changes in your own brand whenever you make any brand changes or whenever you introduce new features. But things to remember here are that it's best used when paired with other methods. Because it doesn't collect behavioral data, it's always a good idea to pair it with usability tests. It lacks the context of user goals, so it's also a good idea to usually pair it with one-on-one interviews, because when it's an experience, there's different personas with different goals, and most of them might perceive the product differently, right? So it's good to have that additional context. And finally, it's self-reported data, so there's a lot of recall bias, and I like to mitigate that by combining it with usability and one-on-one interviews. So thanks so much for sticking with us. I hope you enjoyed this series. I've linked a bunch of fun resources down below for you to check out. And let us know if you like these methods or if you have ever used them. We would love to hear from you.